Okay. What's up guys, my name is Andy. I've got a leak. In my 66 Mustang, I've got a T5 transmission that I installed a while back, but I had to take it apart to repair there was some shimming that had to be done with the intermediate shaft. And when I put it back together, I don't think I did a good enough job between the main body housing and the tail shaft housing. And I've got just a real slow leak, like one drip every time I drive the car, kind of a leak. It's starting to build up on the floor and kind of stay in the floor. And it's starting to run a little bit on the bottom of the tail shaft housing, getting on the car, and it's creating a mess. And it's time to get the transmission out of there and get that thing fixed. You notice that I got the car apart. You don't need to have your car this far apart to take the transmission out, but I've got some other things I'm working on. I'm gonna get the car painted. So this is a good time to go ahead and take the transmission out. So I'm gonna show you guys how to do that. What's great about this is whether you have a T5 or the T10, or there's that side loader and top loader 4-speed transmissions that you can have in these cars. Taking those out is gonna be more or less the same steps. So this will help for whether you guys have that kind of transmission or you have a T5. If you have the C4 automatic transmission, there's a couple extra steps you have to do, but there's a lot of the same stuff, so this might help you there. But I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing taken out, so let's jump right in. So the first thing I would tell you to do is get the car up on jack stems, but I already had that done from some other work I had done on the car. So I'm gonna go right to the part where we're inside the cab here, and I need to take the shifter lever off for the transmission so that I can drop it down from below. I just got a couple of screws up top here, take those out, and then there's 2 Allen bolts that we need to take out of the shifter lever. All right, now we're done up at the top. Now we can go down below the car. Now we got to get this H pipe out of the way. First thing I'm going to do is take out the O2 sensor, then do the bolts on the flange here to the header, same thing on that side, and then we'll take off those V-vent clamps and then get this out of the way. Next, I'm gonna drain the transmission fluid. And the only reason why I'm doing this, partly because I'm gonna take the transmission apart and service it, so I need to have all the fluid out. But also when you take the drive line out, there's gonna be some fluid that leaks out the back, and I don't wanna have to deal with that mess, so I'm just gonna go ahead and drain it now. And while this is draining, I can go ahead and start tackling other stuff. Before we can remove the drive line, we got to get this parking brake assembly out of here. We're just going to pull this spring off of here, loosen up this bolt here for the tensioner, and then pull that cable off there. And this whole assembly bar will come out of the way. Then we can go after the bolts on the end of the axle and get this out of here. Make sure your car is in neutral, and we just got a couple of 1/2-inch nuts on here that we'll take off on these U-bolts, and we can drop this axle and slide it out of the transmission. So I gotta take this plug off. This is for the backup lights, and this just comes off the side. And then I got a zip tie here. I got to cut that guy free. Looks like I was supposed to come back and shorten up this wire, but I never did that, looks like. Get that guy out of the way. Now we got to get the speedometer cable out of the way. That just takes a little 7/16 wrench. We can get this little nut off of here. And this just pops out of the transmission. We can just leave it dangling for now. I like to put this screw back into, or the bolt back into the transmission so I don't lose it. Now we can go after the 11/16 nuts on the bottom of this transmission mount, and then we'll go after these 9/16 nut and bolt here on either side, and we'll take this bracket off, and that transmission will start to drop down, and we'll just have 4 more bolts. And these transmission jacks can be handy. And just take some of the weight off of this so I can take this bracket off. And the last 4 bolts are these 5/8 bolts here. There's 2 on this side and 2 on the other side. And it's gonna be a combination of lowering this jack down a little bit and getting those loose, and then I can kind of slide the transmission back and drop it down, because we don't need to take the belt housing off for what we're doing right here. All right, everything's disconnected now. Drive line's out, the shift linkage up top is disconnected, the drive line, that rear reverse light, the cross member piece, the 4 bolts that hold into the bell housing, fluids drained, everything's done. And this is probably gonna be the hardest part, just because it's kind of cumbersome to move this around and pop this out the back. I've got this transmission jack, so I'll lower it down, and we're just gonna have to wiggle this thing a little bit and just move it backwards towards the back of the car. And that input shaft should just come out of the clutch, and then eventually you'll just come free and you can pull this thing out of the way. If you have 2 people, this would be much easier if you had 2 people to help, just kind of stabilize everything. But don't let it crush you, right? It's not that heavy, but don't put your hand in the way. Just let it fall on the ground. You're not gonna damage anything. Okay. I'm glad I wasn't on that side. Yeah, nothing got broken here, we're fine, but this thing is heavy and it's just cumbersome underneath the car, so. All right, that's out, let's drag it out from the side. Alrighty, so you guys might have seen this wood thing that I had sitting on the side of my shop for a while. All it is just a transmission stand, just a way for me to mount it, or hold this thing in place. Well, I can take things apart, and the input shaft fits through the bottom here, and just nice sturdy stand for this thing while I'm working on it. All right, guys, so that's how you pull a T5 transmission, whether you had a top loader or a side loader, 4-speed. A lot of similarities there, and then if you had the C4, there's a couple extra things because of the linkage inside the car there. But that cross member is gonna be the same, the axle is gonna be the same. You're gonna want to drain your fluid, all that kind of stuff. You notice that I left that hydraulic actuation for the clutch in the place there mounted on the side of the bell housing. That doesn't matter for what we're doing here. I do need to pull the engine. That's gonna be a different video, and I'll take care of that stuff there. But as far as just getting this out of the car, it's pretty, I mean, I'm thinking, gosh, if you guys needed an hour to do it, it'd probably be plenty of time to get this stuff out. A handful of tools, and you can do it. All right, guys, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. And if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out. And we'll see you in the next one.